Okay, so tonight I'm going to talk about my favorite sport, which is boxing. I don't know nothing about basketball, football, ice hockey. We talking about boxing. We talk about boxing. You gotta bring it because I know something about boxing. All right, I'm gonna talk about my two idols in boxing. One, you all gonna know is Mike. All right, Mike Tyson. So Mike is like the chances of Mike happening is like a meteorite hitting Earth. All right, it's 1 in 2 million. That's the chances. So Mike was a phenomenon of the sport. The the built, the ferocity, the punching power, the customado peekaboo style, all of that come together to make a beast. And that's what Mike was, a beast. All right. Uh Knock you out with either hand, you know, bam, bam, right uppercut, bam, bam, left hooks, bam, right cross, bam, 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 left cross, anything, any hand. The chances are you ain't going past 3 rounds where Mike was 19, 20, 21, 22. All right. So Mike began to unravel when he fired Kevin Rooney. He began believing what Customato told him, that he's a god, and he didn't have the luxury of not training. Okay, because in order to sustain that speed and that perpetual motion that Mike fought with, you got to have a foundation. The foundation is conditioning. You got to run. You got to train. You got to have phenomenal conditioning to fight at that pace that Mike fought. He stopped training, and that was the downfall. You know what I'm saying? You can't stop training at 5'11". You don't have the luxury of a George Foreman or the bigger guys that could just take off a round and just jab and take a breather. You don't have that luxury. At 5'11", you got to keep coming. Perpetual motion punches. Mike threw about 50 to 100 punches a round, and that's not sustainable if you're not training. So right around the time when he went to Tokyo, Japan to fight, who's that? Buster Douglas, that bum. You know what I mean? Holyfield knocked him out in the first round. You know, he just nothing was a bum. He caught Mike on a lucky night. Anyway, he wasn't training. He was womanizing. He just fell into that, that nonsense that Customato told him about being a god and being indestructible. He believed that, and that was his downfall. You understand? You give somebody $200, $300 million, the chances are they're going to fall for that okie doke and they're going to stop training. That's 90% of your fighters. So, real briefly, that's what derailed Mike Tyson. His discipline left. You know what I mean? And after he did that 3 years in jail or whatever, that was it. His speed left him. You know what I mean? So he still had the power, but you can't you hitting stuff that's not there. It don't matter if you got the power. You got to hit something if you got power to make it count. So he was done after that, pretty much after he went to jail, or before. However it went, I don't know. But the second idol, it's got to be no other than the man, the eighth wonder of the world, the bald-head wonder, Marvelous Marvin Hagler. That's my second idol. And I want to bring him up because the middleweight was stacked with a whole bunch of people that was good. I could run a whole list of them. There was this British guy, Nigel Benn, he was a beast. He was a miniature Mike Tyson. You know what I mean? They had, you know, they had a bunch of guys in the middleweights that was vicious. But to me, why I admired Marvin Hagler was his discipline. All right, it took him um, about 50 fights before he got a title shot because everybody was ducking him. Nobody wanted to fight him. Nobody wanted to give him a title shot. When they did give him a title shot, they robbed him. So Marvin Hagler made it a rule that he was going to knock out everybody. It wasn't going to be left to the judges. You understand? So I like Marvin because he didn't do what Mike did. All right, he had discipline. He secluded himself and trained and trained and trained. You know, women didn't get into the equation. Money didn't get into the equation. He trained and he defended his title numerous times. He gave everybody a shot. He dispatched the beast Mugabe. He just blew Hearns out the ring, man. You understand? He blew Hearns out the ring. The most vicious 3-round fight ever recorded was Hagler Hearns. Okay, the most vicious 3-round fight ever recorded. It was Hagler Hearns. So after he destroyed Hearns, he did one of the most. It was a travesty what he did. I mean, and tonight I'm going to reveal the biggest hoax in boxing history. You know what I'm saying? It got past the biggest fight analyzer of the time. It got past them. It got past the fighting public. They really pulled off this shit, man. And I'm going to reveal it tonight because it pissed me off back then that my idol, Marvin Hagler, went out with the biggest hoax. He pulled it off and he retired. And the biggest hoax was him and Sugar Ray Leonard. I'm going to tell you why. Okay, number one, Sugar Ray Leonard knew there was a lot of money involved with a fight with him. The public wanted to see Sugar Ray and Marvin Hagler fight. He avoided that fight for one reason. He knew he couldn't beat Marvin Hagler. You know, Sugar Ray wasn't a full-fledged middleweight. He knew Sugar Ray is not an idiot. He knew he couldn't beat Marvin Hagler, man. Sugar Ray knew this, but there was money on the table, millions of dollars, and he had to pull this shit off. So what he did, him and Marvin Hagler were the best friends. You know, Marvin Hagler hated guys like Tommy Hearns, a whole bunch, but him and Sugar Ray was buddies. And they pulled this shit off, and nobody picked it up. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if anybody but me picked this shit up because they pulled this shit off and fooled the entire world. You know what I'm saying? Number one, Marvin Hagler used to come to Mitchellville in the 90s, whenever that fight was. Them two was buddies. Him and Sugar Ray was buddies. You know what I'm saying? They had a long time to rehearse how they was gonna pull this off, and they did it. They did it great. All right, with the exception of keen eyes, boxing eyes like this, they didn't pull it off, and pull it off is where I'm concerned, because that fight was just nothing but a sparring match for Marvin Hagler. If anybody know Marvin Hagler fights, they would know that Marvin Hagler fights with urgency. If he's losing, he's going to find a way to get to your ass, and he's going to get to your ass, and he's going to take you out. There's no way he's going to let Sugar Ray pull off a fight. I don't give a flying fuck how good Sugar Ray is and how fast he is. Marvin Hagler would have cut him off, and he would have laid the hammer on Sugar Ray's ass. And Sugar Ray was not going to be able to withstand that shit. If Marvin was in a real fight with Sugar Ray, he would have knocked fucking Sugar Ray ass out. 3 or 4 rounds, he would have got to Sugar Ray's ass. That was not a real fight. Believe me when I tell you this, okay? Marvin Hagler do not fight like that. There was no sense of urgency in that fight. You go back to the Marvin Hagler and Sugar Ray fight, and you look at it, and you analyze it yourself, and you're going to see it was nothing but a sparring match. It was the biggest hoax ever pulled off in boxing. The Marvin Hagler Sugar Ray fight was a hoax. Take it from me. It was a hoax. You understand? And they did it. They pulled that shit off. Millions of dollars. Marvin Hagler retired into the sunset, went to Italy, and married a white woman. Whatever he did with the rest of his life after that fight, you understand, he pulled it off. Marvin Hagler, you pulled that shit off, man. But you know what? You disappointed a big fan in me. You disappointed this young kid that looked up to you and looked up to you as an idol and looked up to you as a man of high standards. And what you did, you pulled it off for some money. All right? Sugar Ray, you know you couldn't beat Marvin. So you got him over at your house in Mitchellville, wherever you lived at, and y'all discussed that fight together, and y'all figured out how y'all was going to pull that shit off. You know, you did that bolo shit like this and hit him a couple times, and the shit looked good, and everybody clapped, and everybody said, yeah, Sugar Ray. Sugar Ray win nothing, man. That was some bullshit. Admit it, man. I wish you would look at this shit and admit it. Come up, come clean, cough it up, and say that shit was a hoax. It was a hoax. Okay? So I needed to get that off my chest because that was the biggest disappointing fight that I've ever seen Marvin Hagler been a part of, man. And he didn't have to go out like that, man. You know, Marvin Hagler was the most disciplined fighter. He didn't let women, money, or drugs or anything get into his regimen. This man was the most disciplined fighter there was. But he went ahead with Sugar Ray plan for the money, for the love of money. He went ahead and let Sugar Ray beat him. So this is what I want to talk about tonight. And I'm getting it off my chest. Now, if anybody believe me, I don't give a hoot. But if you got any sense and you knew who Marvin Hagler was, you would know that Sugar Ray couldn't beat him. He couldn't. It couldn't happen. So that's all I want to talk about tonight, and have a good night.